Hey guys, I want to do a quick video on why there's a love-hate relationship with PRS guitars. I know there's a lot of views and everybody's pretty set on their opinion about PRS guitars. And there's a lot of video coverage of the 40-year anniversary for Paul Reed Smith. So just to help put this in perspective, because I was a PRS atheist back maybe 10 years ago, further back, I didn't get it. And now as I'm older and my tastes have changed and such, half of my collection are PRS guitars. So what is the love-hate relationship? I think a lot of it has to do with that all your favorites, all your Telecaster, Stratocaster, Les Paul sounds, those are based on a technology. The ones that we really cherish are the ones that were made in the late 50s, early 60s. We cherish those sounds, but so much of any sound that we really find pleasing was based on the technology available at the time. You can listen to a record made in the 20s, 30s, 40s, all the way up into the 2020. You can listen to popular music from those time periods and you can tell what was the sound of that decade, because the technology had a lot to do with what was popular. Because when you're recording with the equipment that was available in the 1920s or 30s or 40s, and you compare that to, say, the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, it's not just the style of the music, but it also has to do with the technology that was available. So with guitars, we enjoy the sounds that were created because in the 50s and 60s, the birth of the electric guitar and the ingenuity that went into it was pretty remarkable. It was nothing had been done quite like that. And so upon that, every generation has built some form of the guitar and tries to get either close to that sound or tries to replicate that, period. So let's move on to how does this affect PRS guitars? Paul Reed Smith, being the engineering type personality that he is, he didn't want to just make another brand of Les Pauls or Strats or Tellys. What he wanted to do was expand and evolve the sound that those instruments make. And that's important to keep in mind, because if you're wanting the PRS guitar to sound just like your 1960 Les Paul, it's not going to. And he wasn't trying to replicate that sound. So I'm sure he feels pretty misunderstood, because what he understood was that, like all things, I have to evolve. And so if you were to see a picture of the sound wave of a classic Les Paul, classic Telly, or whatever, you will see there are certain frequencies that really stick out. Now, what is pretty obvious about certain models is that certain pickups are stronger in a certain frequency range than other frequency ranges. In fact, this is why Jack White or Beck used store catalog type guitars, because the frequency range was so limited that it created its own characteristic, which is why we can hear them and identify immediately the style of music and the guitar that's being used for it. Because what would have been a limiting factor for most people, they took it and made it their signature sound. So nobody faults them for taking a catalog type guitar and making a sound with it. We all think that was genius. So what PRS did was, it was as though they created a guitar that was a refined instrument that did away with a lot of the bad frequencies, quote unquote, and enhanced the right frequencies. So you have pickups that some people would say are bland or soulless. Really, what they did was it kind of corrected some of the out of whack balances that some guitars make. So the best comparison I can give of that was I super enjoyed the Lord of the Rings series movies. Thought they were great. And I noticed that Lord of the Rings it's almost its own religion, just like guitar players have their own religion about how guitars should be and don't mess with things. So I saw the first trilogy of the Lord of the Rings and loved everything about them. I thought Peter Jackson did an amazing job. So when The Hobbit was coming out, I was really excited about it. So then, not only that, but it was going to be shot in like super high definition. The resolution and the refresh rate was a crazy 120 or something. I forgot what it was. So I was super excited. And then when I saw The Hobbit, I was so disappointed, because I was expecting the same experience that I got from The Lord of the Rings, but the quality of the recording that they used for The Hobbit was so high that it showed and articulated all the details of the costumes, for example. So the problem was, it now looked like a play. It didn't look like a movie. It looked like a play, because it detailed the costumes so much that you could see that they were costumes. I was no longer buying into the narrative, because the shooting was so good and detailed that it took away the fantasy part of it, and it looked like a bunch of actors in costumes, not getting lost in that world. So the grittiness, quote unquote, of the original trilogy was so much more enjoyable, because the imperfections of the filming technology allowed your imagination to do a lot of the lifting. And when your imagination takes over, it actually produces the best image that you actually want to see. So even though the technology had evolved, at least I wasn't ready for it. Now, do I appreciate that capabilities, that those exist? Absolutely. And I think probably some people in that business are now using that high definition in the right way and not relying so heavily on it. For example, a movie with great special effects, if the special effects are really good, you shouldn't notice that they're special effects. It should just be part of the story. You're not saying to yourself, oh, they did a great job on the special effects. If they do a great job, it should be to such a point that you don't even realize they are special effects, if that makes sense. So where does all that leave us? So that is why I think there's a love-hate relationship. PRS has taken the evolution of the guitar into another technological advancement. Is it better than the old? No, it's just different. And I can appreciate the things that they refined. And I have romanticized about owning vintage Gibsons or Fenders. But I've come to really appreciate the amount of effort and work that's gone into making the PRS guitars. So if you were to see the spectrum of their pickups, and I don't have that, obviously, sitting in my car, if you could see the spectrum of those pickups, I think he's done an amazing job of making those as clear as possible. I would say they're great at being able to cover a lot of ground. But if you're a very specific player that has a very specialized niche, you may not like that. You may not like that sound because it, quote unquote, may sound too generic. It doesn't have that hyper characterization that maybe some other type of pickups do. So I found that I use the PRS guitars for certain applications, and they're not better or worse. They're just better at some things. And I like those classic models more for certain types of songs that I write. So just keep this in mind. When you think about it, about PRS, rather than comparing them to what you already know, think of it as the sound that has evolved. So it's a technology, they've used technology to make things better. Making things better doesn't mean you'll like it more. Let me say that again. Making things better doesn't mean you'll like it more. Just like a recipe. There's recipes where you want them made a certain way. You know, Coke learned the hard way, don't mess with the formula, because the majority said, don't try to do anything with this. And they learned their lesson. So just think about those things from that perspective. Think about, now the aesthetics is another topic altogether. Like, some people don't like the aesthetics because, once again, the PRS guitars are a more refined instrument. So just like some would say, maybe like the iPhone is a more refined phone, that's apart from whether or not you like the operating system, but the machinery or the hardware is more refined than most Android phones. I'm filming on an Android phone, so don't leave me comments about how much better Android is. So we're talking about software, hardware differences. All that to say, that is why there's a love-hate relationship for Paul Reed Smith guitars. And if you look at it from this lens, I think that you'll begin to appreciate what Paul Reed Smith has done in bringing the guitar into this generation. And I think he spent 40 years wisely, and he's done a lot of innovating. And it's not one innovation, it's like these micro innovations that move the flag a little further down the field. Anyways, it's a great discussion. Thanks for listening, and maybe you will start rethinking this yourself. Have a good day.